hold space for your darkness, a first responder mental health podcast hosted by me, Erin Jane, where we have conversations about what it's like to perform a first responder role and the mental health challenges that can accompany it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mindfulness Mondays, a bonus series within the I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness podcast series. I'm your host, Erin Jane. And today I wanted to jump on and I want to share something with you that I've been working on in one of my psychology classes. So this semester, our focus has been, ways in which we can handle stress and, that stress both physically and psychologically. And also what sort of like self-care strategies we can, engage in to manage all of our stress levels and even increase our levels of resilience, which is probably something that is important to us as first responders and emergency services personnel. So I worked on an assignment, and I think I mentioned it in a previous episode where I spoke with Chris Martinez, also known as Cable, when he was talking about his breathwork book. And so as part of this assignment, I delved into the practice of deep diaphragmatic breathing and how it can be used to combat stress. Now, I know in a previous Mindfulness Mondays episode, I shared with you box breathing, which is still a great resource. The reason I wanted to share deep diaphragmatic breathing with you is simply because it's a little bit different and more in the sense that in doing my research, I had to delve into the physiological systems and processes that our body, goes through and is activated when we have some kind of level of stress, that we're exposed to it. And, most of us have some kind of basic understanding of, either what our stress response is or how our body reacts and, perhaps even like what hormones get released in terms of, most of us would, have heard of cortisol in our time and heard the term fight or flight. But we might not necessarily understand the implications of what that can have for us, when it comes to us personally and in particular, what it means when it comes to our roles. Because being first responders, we experience this stress response, very, very frequently, if not every single shift, multiple times a shift. As part of our profession, which is definitely different to, the members of the general public. And this chronic exposure to stress, and it's often in the form of trauma and critical incidents and all that kind of thing, can have such significant and negative effects on our mental and physical health, which I sort of go into in more detail in my assignment. But really, the whole purpose of doing these Mindfulness Monday episodes is to share stuff like this with you, to share tips, tricks, resources that you in the first responder community can utilize. And I guess just as I go on and progress throughout, my psychology studies, just be able to share them with you if they're like, a small little takeaway, and really just like something else to kind of place on your tool belt as one of the resources that, should you choose to utilize it or not, that's entirely up to you. But, I want to give you the information and provide you with a resource so that you have it should you want it to be able to perform, optimally in your role. And look, believe me, I've fallen into so many rabbit holes, the last few months in terms of looking at all of this stuff and, put it this way, you guys are getting off easy. My wonderful firefighter husband is bearing the brunt of me traipsing down all of these rabbit holes and, delving into all of this research, because it's it's impactful, especially when, you start learning about the effects that it can have on us. And people who are, exposed chronically to stress. And as someone who, previously did, that role, it's definitely something that I guess I'd sort of known about a little bit earlier. And especially, the person that I love and want to, look after the most, it's his reality every single week, multiple times a week. So I want him to be as healthy as he possibly can be. So like I said, he is bearing the brunt of all this knowledge. I've got him, starting on new vitamin regimes to try to help combat like the oxidative stress that you get in your system and lower his cortisol levels and all that kind of thing. And I'm, providing him the information of, various relaxation techniques and, breathing exercises and stuff like that for him to, utilize and try at work should he want to. So I'm sure he's really loving it right now. But he is kind of, my personal guinea pig. So I'm sharing like a little tidbit with you guys right now. And obviously if he, reports back some feedback and there's anything in particular that he's finding is really helping, I will most definitely be jumping right back on here to share it with you guys. Look, I don't want to waffle on here much longer, which you guys know I apparently tend to struggle with sometimes. But I guess it's just to say that the purpose of sharing these things with you, and this week it's deep diaphragmatic breathing. It's because relaxation and mindfulness techniques, look, I get it, although starting to hear about it initially, and I would very much have been in that place. You might roll your eyes and think, oh, fucking sounds like bullshit. And I do get it. I do get that cynicism or the, fucking I'll be right attitude. But the things that I'm wanting to share with you in particular today, and as I, progress on through my psychology studies and sharing, different strategies with you here, it's because they are evidence backed and empirically researched therapeutic approaches that realistically it's placing you back in control of your own body and your nervous system. And as first responders, I think we know that we like to be in control most of the time. And so we obviously cannot control certain physiological responses that our body goes through, and the, stress response, that fight or flight reaction, we have no control over that. Number one, we can't control when it occurs. Number two, we actually can't control which response we respond in, if that makes sense. So as in there's fight or flight, and then there's also freeze, and there's fawn. So there's actually 4 responses. In my presentation, I basically kind of just focus on the fight or flight, but it is something that, I probably will address in a different episode, that sometimes there is great shame in the way that we respond to things because we can't always control it. But trying to, I guess, just giving you the information and providing you this knowledge and linking, in this instance, deep diaphragmatic breathing and linking it to your relaxation response and showing you how one affects the other. I'm really just trying to provide you with knowledge and the capacity for you to be able to calm yourself down in a moment of your choosing by your own actions. And all of the research that I delved into, which I cover off in the fun-filled PowerPoint presentation that I've included in this podcast episode, it's just really trying to hand you the keys back to your own system, helping you find a balance just by doing some breathing techniques. And that's really it. That's as simple as it gets. And look, whether you choose to utilize it or not, that's entirely up to you. It's I'm just throwing it out there as a resource because I think it's worthwhile. I think having the ability to control our bodily systems and functions in terms of bringing ourselves out of that fight or flight, that stress response, and drawing yourself back into a relaxation response, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. I think it's important, and I think it's something that, as first responders, we should be given these tools and these resources, because I think we all know we're at higher risk of suffering so many mental and behavioral health conditions as a result of the things that we do with our job. And the same as, a lot of negative physical health outcomes and expectations due to our shift work, due to chronic stress, due to trauma exposure, all of the things. So this is just one small way to be able to help you combat some of that, and that's it. And it's, you'll see on the slides, if you choose to watch this, that there's like the research papers that and the journal articles that I've utilized to get this information. So it's proven to make a difference, and that's what it's all about, really. So I don't know, some people have different preferences in terms of how they prefer to, engage with podcasts. Some people just like to listen. I know I'm sort of someone who mostly just likes to listen. But I do release video episodes of these on Spotify and on YouTube. And the main reason that I would implore anyone who perhaps doesn't normally just to jump on and watch, the rest of this episode in the video format is because the assignment is actually a PowerPoint presentation, like I mentioned earlier, and there is extra information on the slides as well as what I speak. So yeah, if you're interested, you can jump on and watch it somewhere. If you haven't already, you can subscribe on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. So anytime I release a new episode, you get it in your hot little hand or hot little device, or whatever way you choose to engage in your podcasts. But yeah, if there's extra information that you would maybe want to see that are on the slides, I would encourage you to give it a watch. It had to be under 6 minutes, so it's not very long. And as always, if there's any questions you have or anything else like that, always feel free to reach out. And finally, I will wrap it up, and after I finish speaking, that's when the PowerPoint presentation will commence. I do just want to give a quick shout out to one of my girlfriends back home in Australia, who has always been an amazing support for me. Just throughout sort of life, the whole time I've known her, and as well, venturing down the path of doing this podcast. And she reached out to me last night, so Sunday night American time, Monday morning Australian time, and was like, hey, I've been listening to your, Mindfulness Monday episodes. I really like them. And I was like, cool, thanks, babe. She was like, what the fuck? She's like, why isn't there one today? So thank you, Em, for shoving a rocket up my ass and making me jump on and release this, albeit a few hours late when it comes to my Australian audience, but bang on time for Monday for the American audience. So thank you to her for making sure that I get this out and didn't wait till next week, because yeah, it's something that I definitely want to share with everyone. Super simple. I hope there's something in it for you, that you find some kind of benefit, and like I said, any questions, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, I hope you'll give it a try, and I'm always open to hear about anything that you found beneficial from any of these episodes. Okay. I will jump off so you can listen to the information about deep diaphragmatic breathing and the ways that it can combat stress. So thank you for your time. This has been Erin Jane with another episode of Mindfulness Mondays, a bonus series within the I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. Thank you again. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers. Deep diaphragmatic breathing to combat stress. The term stress has 3 different contextual meanings. It's a response within our body that affects us physiologically, psychologically, and behaviourally, an external stimulus known as a stressor, and a process or integrated transaction we undergo where our perception and appraisal is crucial. Essentially, stress is when something in our external environment is placing a demand on us that could be viewed as dangerous or threatening, and an adaptation is necessary in our actions and behaviour. Experiencing this stimulus triggers a physiological response within our body, where our sympathetic nervous system is activated, a process instigated by the hypothalamus, sending acute signals to our adrenal and endocrine systems that we are under threat and our body requires immediate action. Known today as the fight or flight response, a primitive survival adaptation which remains as part of our physiology today. This response includes the release of stress hormones like cortisol into our system and increases our heart rate, body temperature, blood pressure, breathing, and causes other physical responses. While we can't control this response, our amygdala-based assessment of the perceived threat is important in how we react and respond. It's also important to note that our assessment can be skewed and inaccurate. Our body is naturally designed to return to a state of equilibrium, known as homeostasis, once the threat is over. This balance to our stress response is our relaxation response, controlled by our parasympathetic nervous system and also regulated by the hypothalamus. It communicates to our body to reverse all the actions of the stress response, allowing our body to rest and recuperate. However, stress experience over a prolonged period has serious implications for our health, both physically and psychologically. Our fight or flight response was adapted to be an acute reaction and isn't designed to be sustained over extended periods of time. Chronic stress causes severe inflammation, lowering our immune system efficacy and cognitive functions, increases the risk of many conditions including cardiovascular disease, heart attack and stroke, as well as the onset of mental health conditions, and increases the chances of maladaptive coping strategies. Deep diaphragmatic breathing is a controlled breathing technique, also known as belly or abdominal breathing, taught for relaxation, where our respirations are slowed and deepened by fully engaging the diaphragm. It can be completed in a seated, standing, or prone position, with hands positioned strategically to ensure respirations are completed effectively. It consists of deep breaths in through the nose and exhaled out through the mouth, often involving counting or pausing, and can be personalized for the individual, capable of being utilized anywhere with a positive psychological and physiological impact. By lowering our respirations, this breathing mimics our body's natural mechanism to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, triggering the relaxation response. This is the main goal, returning our body to homeostasis. As both states can't function in the body at the same time, it denies the stress response the opportunity to still operate, so our sense of arousal is replaced by one of calm. It mitigates the stress response with immediacy and efficacy by lowering the levels of stress hormones, decreasing our heart rate and blood pressure, essentially all of the bodily functions and systems activated previously when under stress. By reducing our stress, it provides a sense of autonomy over our subjective sense of well-being, lowers the risk of numerous mental health conditions, and negates the effect of stress on our cognition and brain function. It decreases many of the physical health risks like heart attacks and cancer. Inflammation throughout the body is reduced, which means our immune system can function optimally, and this breathing itself is an adaptive coping strategy. Control is beneficial for self-efficacy, and by controlling our breathing, it also assists in regulating our mood, arousal level, and emotions. It can also provide a higher sensitivity and understanding of our own internal states, where we can learn to anticipate the imminent rise of our stress levels and engage in this breathing to intuitively counteract it. Deep diaphragmatic breathing is a controlled breathing technique and relaxation tool that can enhance the regulation of our stress response. It's an easy, readily available, self-directed practice and can be taught through psychoeducation and used universally. promoting adherence to it as a low-cost resource. It promotes a sense of autonomy, self-efficacy, and control over the regulation of one's psychophysiological state. Our stress response is a biological process that we can't control, so possessing the power to return ourselves back to homeostasis is important, especially for those with a biological predisposition or frequent environmental exposure. With regular practice, stress can be effectively managed, allowing for greater resilience and acute relief, even used preventatively. However, the context of when this is offered is important. It's not an overall remedy or cure for stress, but rather an immediate mitigation and coping skill. The underlying cause of stress requires identification and treatment. In a clinical environment, sufficient psychoeducation should be provided. Any patient suffering any kind of respiratory condition, a recent injury or surgery, should definitely check with their physician. Collaboration is important. The patient should be a willing participant, and any religious or cultural consideration should be accounted for. For any patients who have experienced trauma or any psychological condition or symptom as a result, consideration should also be shown. A certain level of trust must exist for a patient to want to place themselves in a relaxed state, which could feel incredibly vulnerable for them after existing in a chronic state of stress. A directed session may be more appropriate before self-directed practice in this instance. To combat stress, deep diaphragmatic breathing as a self-care practice and relaxation strategy is a remarkable resource. The ability to alter our physiological state by taking a few deep breaths is something that should be utilized and promoted more. Thanks for your time.
Hi guys, it's Erin Jane here. Firstly, thank you for listening to I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. This podcast really is for you, the listener, and I hope you're finding as much value in listening to these conversations as I am in having them. If you'd like to offer any feedback, suggest a subject matter, are interested in being a podcast guest, or would like to get in contact to receive first responder life and wellness coaching services, please reach out. You can find me on Instagram at Erin Jane Coaching, or the dedicated podcast account, ErinJane_Darkness Podcast, or my website, www.erinjanecoaching.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm so grateful to have you as part of this darkness community. Cheers.